My name is Sophia Carter, and I am 27 years old. My parents transferred the jewelry shop I'd worked at for 10 years to my sister. I simply said, "Handle it yourself." Now they're calling me in a panic. If you have ever felt betrayed by the people who should have been your biggest supporters, let me know where you are watching from. I found out the truth on a Tuesday afternoon while looking for insurance documentation in Richard's office file cabinet. The transfer papers, nestled amid obsolete lease agreements and vendor contracts. Carter and his family locate jewelers. My grandfather's 1975 company, the shop where I'd spent practically every waking hour for the previous 10 years, was formally handed to my younger sister Sophie 6 months ago. My hands shook as I read the paperwork. She now owned every asset, every item of goods, and the whole facility. The papers showed a date of July 1st, 6 months ago. They kept this a secret for 6 months while I worked myself to exhaustion, believing I was creating my future. I gently put everything back in its place and headed back into the sales floor. Richard stood at the repair counter, looking at an antique Cartier watch under his loupe. Helen assisted a customer in selecting an engagement ring. Sophie sat at the desk beside the window, browsing through her phone as usual. Neither of them glanced up. The business has been my entire universe since I graduated from high school. While my buddies attended college, I remained behind to study the business from the ground up. Gemology, metalwork, customer service, accountancy, and inventory management. I assimilated all Richard taught me. I acquired my GIA graduate certification by taking night sessions and studying after 10-hour stints at the shop. I developed contacts with our suppliers, attended trade exhibitions, and increased our custom design services. Sophie, on the other hand, attended college. She studied marketing at UCLA, spent her summers touring across Europe, and joined a sorority. She'd come into the business about twice a month, generally when she needed money. She didn't know the difference between a round brilliant and a princess-cut diamond. She once questioned a customer whether sapphires come from mines or trees. Nonetheless, she was now the sole proprietor of Carter Family Fine Jewelers. I completed the remainder of that Tuesday on autopilot. I assisted Mrs. Allen in selecting pearls for her granddaughter's graduation. I sized Mr. Bennett's wedding band. I processed 3 internet orders. We updated our social media profiles and confirmed appointments for the remainder of the week. I had done all of the jobs 1,000 times before, yet everything seemed different today. That evening, I sat in my apartment and reflected on my life for the first time in years. I stayed in a tight studio since I couldn't afford anything nicer. My automobile was 15 years old and had a damaged air conditioner. My savings account had exactly $4,500. I hadn't had a vacation since high school. I worked an average of 70 hours every week, which included weekends. I accomplished all of this without receiving a wage. The agreement had always been for me to earn equity in the family firm. Richard stated that I was investing in my future. He assured me that the shop would soon be mine, and that I would earn my inheritance through hard work and commitment. I had believed him. I'd given up everything in my 20s, including my social life, relationships, and prospects, in the belief that it would secure my future. Wednesday morning, I awoke with complete clarity. I was not furious. I was not injured. I was finished. I dressed, went to the business, and arrived at my normal 6:30 a.m. I brewed coffee in the back room while looking up templates on my laptop. By the time Helen and Richard arrived at 8 o'clock, I had written my resignation letter and created a comprehensive handover document. "Good morning, sweetie," Helen said, placing her coat in the back. "Did you remember to call about the showcase lighting? We need to talk. I told you. All of us, including Sophie." Richard frowned. "Sophie doesn't come in on Wednesday. You are aware of this. Call her. This is of direct significance to her." Something in my tone made them both pause. Richard took out his phone without resistance. Sophie entered 20 minutes later, unhappy that she had been summoned. "This better be important, Sophia," she remarked. "I have a Pilates class at 11:00. I set 2 copies of my resignation letter on the counter, one for Helen and one for Richard. "I am quitting from Carter Family Fine Jewelers, effective immediately." The quiet lasted for several seconds. "What?" Helen's voice came out as a whisper. "I'm quitting. I won't be working here anymore." Richard eventually took up the letter and immediately scanned it. "Sophia, what is this about? Has something happened?" "I discovered the transfer documentation. I know you handed over the business to Sophie." Helen's face became pale. Sophie seemed perplexed. Apparently, she had no idea. "I did not know, honey, we were going to tell you," Helen began. When, after another year of working 70-hour weeks, I hit 30 and realized I had given you a decade for nothing. Richard raised his voice, saying, "It's not nothing. You have learned vital skills. You've had the opportunity to learn what I could have while earning money." I maintained my voice level. "You lied to me. For years, you assured me that I was striving toward ownership. You made me believe that my future was here." "We never guaranteed anything in writing," Richard stated, and I watched him go into business mode. "You choose to work here. Nobody coerced you." The coldness of his comment clinched the deal for me. "You're totally correct. I elected to work here, and I am now choosing to go." "You cannot simply forsake the family business," Helen's voice crackled. "This is not my family's business. The legal records state that it is Sophie's business." I turned to face my sister. "Congratulations on the inheritance. I hope you enjoyed it." Sophie had been silent during the conversation, but suddenly she spoke out. "Sophia, I did not ask for this." Helen and Richard considered. "I do not care what you ask for or what people think. This is what occurred, and I am done." I removed a large folder from my luggage. "This includes passwords for all of our accounts, contact information for our top suppliers, details on ongoing orders, customer preferences, forthcoming appointments, and maintenance schedules. Everything you need." Richard's countenance changed from fury to terror. "Sophia, be reasonable. You cannot abandon us like this. We have a Morrison anniversary celebration order due next Thursday. The Kin's bespoke engagement ring requires final approval. Mrs. Miller's estate valuation. These are company concerns that the owner should address." I looked at Sophie. "You are the owner. Handle them." Sophie remarked, "I don't know how to do any of that." "Then learn." I did. I gathered my personal belongings from the back office, including a few books, my favorite mug, and a photograph of Grandpa Lawrence from before his death. Everything else belongs to the shop. I strolled into the store one last time, past the display cases I'd set up, the repair bench where I'd spent many hours, and the design table where I'd drawn unique pieces for clients. "Please, Sophia," Helen called after me. "We can debate this. We can figure something out." I hesitated at the doorway. "There is nothing to discuss. You made your decision, and I'm making mine." The first several days felt odd. I slept after 6 o'clock a.m. for the first time in years. I went to the grocery shop on a weekday morning and was amazed by how empty it was. I read a whole book in one afternoon. I forgot what day it was, since it no longer mattered. My phone continually rang. Helen phoned every several hours, leaving voicemails that ranged from guilt trips to bargaining. "At the very least, come in part-time. What about merely doing the repair work? Think of our customers." I didn't respond. Sophie texted me every day. The majority of her texts were anxious queries. How can I utilize the inventory system? What exactly does rhodium plating mean? I'm at a loss for words when a consumer asks about clarity grades. I did not react. Richard did not respond at all, which told me all I needed to know about his pride. On day 5, I began job hunting. I revised my resume to reflect my GIA qualification, metalworking abilities, and customer service expertise. Within 2 days, I had 3 interviews set with competitive jewelry businesses in the region. They were all astonished to find that I was accessible. "We heard you were going to take over your family's firm," stated the manager of Prestige Gems during my interview. "Plans have altered," I said simply. By the end of the week, I had received 2 job offers. Both provided genuine salaries, paychecks with benefits, and paid time off. The premise seemed weird. One employment was with a high-end shop in Beverly Hills. The other was with a jewelry designer who specialized in bespoke engagement rings and wanted someone to help manage her expanding business. I was leaning toward the designer role until Richard phoned. It was Thursday evening, 6 days after I had walked out. His name appeared on my screen, and I nearly didn't respond, but curiosity got the best of me. "Sophia." His voice seemed strained. "We need to discuss." "Do we?" I asked. "The Silverman account. They are threatening to leave." David and Laura Green have shopped at Carter for 37 years. They had purchased engagement rings, anniversary presents, and family artifacts. Ruth visited us quarterly to have her jewelry cleaned and examined. David bought her a new item for each birthday and Christmas. They spent around $45,000 each year with us, making them one of our top 5 clients. "Why are they leaving?" I inquired, even though I already knew. Ruth came in yesterday during her quarterly cleaning appointment. Sophie was unaware of the required procedures. She tossed Ruth's classic Tiffany jewelry in the ultrasonic cleaner without examining it first. The artwork contains fine filigree work that was destroyed. Ruth was upset. I closed my eyes. The ultrasonic cleaner was extremely strong, potentially damaging some types of jewelry. That was something I learned throughout my first month. It was fundamental information. Sophie attempted to explain. Richard persisted, but she made everything worse. She volunteered to fix it, but then revealed she has no experience working on old things. Ruth inquired where you were, and Sophie said, "You don't work here anymore. Ruth wants to deal with you personally, or they'll take their business elsewhere." I see, Sophia. This is serious. If we lose the Greenmans, others may follow. You are aware of the modest size of the jewelry community here. Word spreads. It does. Silence spread between us. I could hear him breathe. I could envision him in his office, most likely seated at the desk where I discovered the transfer documents. What do you want me to do, Richard? Come back, talk with Ruth, repair the bracelet, smooth things out? Number Sophia, you handed over the business to Sophie. This is her problem to tackle. She can't handle it. You know she can't. Then maybe you should have considered that before giving her the business. We assumed he had faded off. What did you think? That I will always labor for free? That I would be grateful to serve my younger sister for the rest of my life? We believed you'd understand. Sophie requires security. She lacks your abilities and work ethic. The business will provide her with stability. Something about the phrase made me giggle, a harsh, unpleasant sound. So, because she is less capable, she is entitled to inherit everything. That is your logic. That's not what I intended. Richard, let me explain something to you. I spent 10 years understanding this business. I gave up my youth, my education, and my social life. I did it because you had promised me a future. You lied. And now that your deception is coming up with you, you expect me to bail you out. This isn't only about me. This is about the family's legacy. This firm was created by your grandpa. Don't you care about that? Nobody cared more about it than I did, but Grandpa is no longer alive, and his business appears to have been taken over by someone who cannot even securely clean a bracelet. That was not my doing. Sophia, please. I am requesting your assistance, yet I am declining. I took a breath, but I'll offer you some free advice. Tell Sophie to contact Lena Hughes at Heritage Jewelry Restoration. Lena specializes in old items. She will be able to fix the Tiffany bracelet. It will cost you, but she is worth it. What about Ruth? She wants to speak to you. Ruth has my number. If she contacts me directly, I'll speak with her, but I won't go inside that business to solve your concerns. This is petty, Sophia. This is not like you. You're correct. The old Chloe would have run as soon as you called. The old Chloe would have corrected everything, asked for nothing, and continued to labor for free. However, Chloe does not exist anymore. You murdered her when you went forward with the transfer paperwork. I heard him inhale hard. We did not fabricate anything. It was a family choice, a familial choice that I was not involved in. Interesting definition of family. Your mother and I had a long discussion about it. We did what we felt was best. Who is it best for? Definitely not for me. He was silent for a long time. What do you want, Sophia? Money. We can put you on a salary, $25 per hour. $25 per hour. I have a GIA certificate and 10 years of specialized expertise. I've been offered $50 per hour plus perks and a percentage on sales. Another lapse in stillness. Who offered you that? Does it matter? Are you genuinely planning to work for our competitors? They're not your competitors. They are my employers. There is a distinction. Sophia, I'm asking you once again. Come back. We can figure it out. We can create a contract that provides you some ownership, a genuine wage, partial ownership. Richard, I already own it. I built half of the shop's worth. The custom design service currently generates 30% of your earnings. I began it. The social media presence attracts younger clients. Me, our association with Emerald City Gems, allows us preferential access to premium stones. That took me 4 years to cultivate. Then don't toss it all away. I am not throwing anything away. You already did this when you signed the paperwork. So this is vengeance. You're going to stand by and watch the business fail. His words remained in the air. I wondered whether this was payback. It didn't feel like vengeance. Revenge suggested rage and a desire to harm. I didn't feel furious anymore. I felt liberated. I'm not going to stand by and watch anything. I am going forward in my life. If the business fails, it is because the person you hired cannot operate it. That's the result of your decision, not mine. We cannot lose the Greenmans. I responded calmly, let the air handle it, and ended the conversation. I sat in the solitude of my flat, phone in hand, and felt only comfort. Ruth Greenman called me that evening. We chatted for 20 minutes. I apologized for the incident. told her that I no longer worked at Carter's, and provided her Lena Hughes' contact information. I also explained that Gemstone Studios in Pasadena had a good reputation and would handle her pieces with care. Ruth expressed, "Regret that you had departed. You were always a pleasure to deal with, informed and attentive with my things." Thanks, Mrs. Greenman. This means a lot to me. David and I will need to evaluate where we conduct business. Carter is not the same without you. After we hung up, I felt a tinge of shame. When I recalled the transfer documentation, the guilt vanished. I'd given that company everything. They had offered me nothing in return. The weekend passed peacefully. I took a position with Isabel Hayes, a bespoke engagement ring designer who had been featured in Vogue and had a 6-month waiting list for her designs. My starting date was planned for the following Monday. The annual compensation was $90,000, plus a commission on any designs I contributed to. It provided health insurance, 2 weeks vacation, and a 401k match. I had been working for free for 10 years. Now I was earning $90,000. The week before I started my new work seemed strange. For the first time since high school, I had real free time with no guilt attached. I attended a yoga lesson on Tuesday morning. On Wednesday, I caught up with my old friend Lily for lunch, whom I hadn't seen in over a year since I was always too busy at the shop. She had scarcely recognized me at first. "Oh my God, Sophia, you look different, more comfortable or something." We caught up over sushi, and I told her everything. She listened with increasing indignation. Her California part was forgotten on her plate. "Are you kidding me? They just handed Sophie everything after you had effectively run the company. Apparently, I was too competent to require an inheritance." Lily shakes her head. "That's the most bizarre logic I've ever heard. So, they penalized you for doing well in your job?" "Something like that." "Well, screw them. You're going to be fantastic in this new position. Isabel Hayes is legitimate. I have seen her art all over Instagram. This is your chance to gain credit for what you do." She was correct. On Thursday afternoon, I headed to Isabel's studio in Silver Lake to sign my job contract and be orientated before my formal start day. I felt something change inside me as soon as I went inside her workstation. The studio was light and spacious, with floor-to-ceiling windows that let in beautiful natural light. Her design table was orderly yet lived in, with designs tacked on a large corkboard and jewels arranged in little glass dishes. "Sophia, welcome." Isabel was in her early 50s, with silver-streaked black hair, twisted up into an untidy bun, and paint-stained fingers. She wore jeans and a basic black t-shirt, which was a stark contrast to the traditional business gear my mother insisted on at Carter's. "Come in and let me show you around." She took me through every detail of her procedure. Unlike my father, who hoarded information as if it gave him power, Isabel freely shared everything. She gave me her supplier contact information, pricing algorithms, and client management system. She showed portfolios of previous work and described her design concept. "I believe in partnership," she explained. "You're not simply here to carry out my vision. I want your thoughts and creativity." Some of my finest work has resulted from brainstorming with my staff. We spent 3 hours together that afternoon, and she asked about my experience, training, and the styles I was drawn to. When I mentioned my interest in incorporating vintage elements into modern designs, her eyes lit up. "That's exactly the kind of fresh perspective I need. I've been wanting to expand in that direction, but haven't had the time." She took out a folder and said, "Look at these potential clients who've contacted me about redesigning inherited jewelry. I've been turning them down because I don't have time, but with you here, we could build an entire service line around this." My mind was already racing with possibilities. We could offer consultations where clients bring in their heirloom pieces, and we discuss options for modernization while preserving sentimental elements. Some people just need a refresh, such as turning a vintage brooch into a pendant, while others may want something completely new with the original stones. And you have the technical skills to work with antique settings and delicate pieces. This could be huge for us. She grinned. "I'm so glad you applied here. When I saw your resume, I couldn't believe you were available. Your family shop has a solid reputation." "Head," I corrected gently. "It's now under new management." "Their loss," Isabel said simply. "Seriously, Sophia, I've been in this business for 28 years. I recognize talent when I see it, and I know that when someone has been undervalued, they will thrive here." I left her studio feeling lighter than I had in years, perhaps ever. This was what work was supposed to feel like, energizing rather than draining, collaborative rather than isolating, and appreciated rather than taken for granted. Sophie arrived at my flat on a Sunday afternoon. I nearly didn't answer the doorbell, but she yelled through it. "Sophia, please, I just want to chat." I opened the door. She looked exhausted, hair pulled back messily, no makeup, dressed in sweatpants, so different from her usual polished appearance. "Can I come in?" I stood aside. She walked in and immediately started crying. "I can't do this," she sobbed. "I don't know what I'm doing. Every day is a disaster. Mr. Allen came in yesterday about his wife's ring repair, and I didn't know what he was talking about. I couldn't find the paperwork, so he got angry and left. Mrs. Miller called about her estate appraisal appointment, and I didn't know what information I was supposed to gather." Sophie continued. "Why did they do this? I never wanted the shop. I don't know anything about jewelry. I can't tell good stones from mediocre ones. I don't understand half of the terminology. A customer asked me about conflict-free diamonds yesterday, and I had no idea what she meant. Did you ask Helen and Richard why they transferred it to you?" She nodded, wiping her eyes. "They said you were strong enough to make your own way. They said I needed the security more than you did. They said it didn't matter because you'd still be running everything anyway." There it was. The truth was revealed. They gave Sophie ownership because they assumed I'd keep doing all the work regardless. They counted on my loyalty, dedication to Grandpa Lawrence's legacy, and inability to walk away. "What do you want from me, Sophie?" "Help, please. I'll pay you. We can make you a partner or something, and I'll split the ownership with you." "No, Sophia, you came here because the firm is failing, not because you feel awful about what occurred. If everything was going well, would you be here asking to share ownership?" She didn't respond, which was sufficient. "Here's what's going to happen," I said. "You have 3 options. First, you can continue to manage the shop yourself, learn on the job, make errors, and lose clients. You might be able to figure it out eventually. Second, you may engage a professional jeweler to handle everything. It will reduce your profits, but the firm may survive. Third, you can sell the firm while it is still valuable. I cannot sell it. It has been in our family for generations." "Then select option 1 or 2. What about option 4, where you return?" "That does not exist." She gazed at me. "Do you truly hate us now?" "I do not detest you. I'm done being taken advantage of." "I did not take advantage of you. Perhaps not purposefully, but you profited from it. You attended college while I worked. You traveled while I was locked in the store. You developed a social life, but I built someone else's business. And now you own the firm while I possess nothing. That is not my fault." "It isn't, but it's also not mine to repair." Sophie departed shortly after that, still in tears. I felt sorry for her. She'd been caught in the thick of our parents' bad planning, but my pity only went so far. She may have declined the transfer. She may have requested that I be included. She had also made her own decisions. Monday morning, I began my new work. Carter's studio was nothing like Isabel Hayes's, modern, inventive, and focused only on artistic rather than sales numbers. She taught me new skills, demonstrated her creative process, and entrusted me with key clients. That first week, I worked 40 hours and received my first paycheck. When I opened the mail on Friday afternoon and saw the actual check, $2,000 after taxes, I sat in my car crying. Not sad tears, but relief, affirmation, proof that I had made the correct decision. I cashed the check and headed straight to Target. For years, I'd put off updating essential items since I was constantly broke. Now, I purchased new towels that were not threadbare, a quality set of kitchen knives, linens with an actual thread count, and other simple items that most people take for granted, but that I considered luxury. That weekend, I began thinking seriously about my future in a manner I had never done before. With genuine income, I could plan, save, invest, and create something for myself. I started a Roth IRA and looked into continuing education classes. I created a Pinterest board for my ideal studio space. Something that appeared excessive and unachievable only a few weeks ago now appears to be doable someday. I met my first customer during my second week at Isabel's. Olivia Carter requested a handmade engagement ring for her girlfriend's proposal. Isabel attended the consultation, but I took the lead. "Tell me about her," I said. "What are her favorite things? What is her style?" Olivia's expression relaxed. "She is a marine scientist who is completely infatuated with the water. She wears a lot of silver and turquoise. However, I'd want something more beautiful for the engagement ring, something that reflects her hobbies while being polished enough for everyday wear." My thoughts immediately began to work. How about an aquamarine center stone? It is the hue of tropical seas, a clear blue-green. We could set it in platinum with a wave-patterned ring, subtle enough to be timeless, yet important to her. Olivia's eyes widened. That is perfect. That was exactly what I couldn't say but knew I needed. We spent an hour together drawing concepts and exploring stone alternatives. By the end of the consultation, Olivia had approved a design and made a deposit. After she departed, Isabel approached me. That was masterful. You read her correctly and offered her something personal without sounding trite. That is an uncommon skill. Thank you. I enjoy the puzzle aspect of it, figuring out what someone truly wants, even if they are unable to communicate it. You're outstanding at it. I'm adding your name on the website as a designer. Clients may request to work with you specifically. My name appears on a professional website as a designer, not as the owner's daughter, or the girl who works at Carter's. Chloe Carter, a jewelry designer. The calls from my parents persisted, but were less frequent. Richard attempted fury. You are ruining your family for pride. Helen attempted guilt. Your grandfather would be very disappointed. Neither approach worked. 3 weeks after my departure, I learned via a mutual acquaintance that Carter Family Fine Jewelers had lost 4 big customers. The Greenmans, Ken, Millers, and Bronson family were all loyal clients who had expressly requested me and were informed that I no longer work there. I also learned that Sophie had recruited a manager, a recently retired jeweler called Jack Turner. He was competent enough to keep the firm going, but his pay and perks were drastically reducing their profit margins. 4 weeks later, Helen called in a new tone. Sophia, we need to talk about the financial situation. How about it? The firm is floundering. We've lost too many critical clients, and Jack's compensation is significant. We are barely breaking even right now. That is unfortunate. We were wondering whether you would be prepared to invest in the firm. We might offer you a share in return for funds if you agree to consult on critical issues. I nearly laughed. You want me to pay money to own a portion of the business I built? That is the only way to express it, Helen. The answer is no. We are family, Sophia. Families do not lie to each other for years. Family does not steal a person's future. We did not steal anything. We made a business decision, and I'm making one as well. My option is to invest my time and energy in my own future, not yours. She hung up without saying goodbye, and I jumped right into my new role. Isabel recognized my abilities and increased my responsibilities, and within 2 months I was designing my own custom engagement rings for clients who had specifically requested them. My designs were featured on Isabel's Instagram, which had over 220,000 followers, and I began to build my own reputation. One Saturday afternoon, approximately 4 months after leaving Carter's, I ran into Ruth Greenman at a coffee shop. Sophia, she smiled brightly, how wonderful to see you. I've been following your work with Isabel Hayes. Absolutely stunning designs. Thank you, Mrs. Greenman. That means a lot. David and I have been shopping at Gemstone Studios as you suggested, and they're lovely, but we miss your personal touch. She paused. We're celebrating our 45th anniversary next month, and David wants to commission something special for me. Would you be available? Ruth Greenman, one of my parents' clients, was now my client. I'd be honored, I said. She squeezed my hand. Your parents made a mistake, dear, but that's their loss and Isabel's gain. The commission was for a custom necklace with sapphires from a ring David's grandmother had given Ruth years ago. I spent weeks on the design, carefully preserving the vintage stones while creating something entirely new. The final piece was stunning, elegant, and timeless, with delicate metalwork that perfectly showcased the sapphires. Ruth cried when I presented it to her. David wrote me a check for $20,000, which included a generous tip. They also wrote a glowing review, which Isabel posted on her website. Sophie called me 6 months after I left Carter. Not a text, not a message through Helen, a direct call. Sophia, I need to tell you something. Okay, I'm selling the business. I felt a jolt of surprise. What? I can't do this anymore. Even with Jack managing everything, I'm miserable. I dread going in every day. It's not my passion, and I'm tired of pretending it is. She breathed. Helen and Richard are furious. Richard isn't speaking to me. Helen keeps crying about Grandpa Lawrence's legacy, and she laughs bitterly. It's funny how now they care about family loyalty. And I'm sorry you're dealing with that. I'm sorry for putting you in an impossible situation, for giving you something you didn't want, and expecting you to want it anyway. And for what it's worth, I should have said something when they did the transfer to make sure you were included. I knew it was wrong, but I was too selfish to speak up. It was the first real apology any of them had offered. Thank you for saying that. The sale should finalize in about 2 months. After fees and debts, I'll net around 900,000. I'd like to give you half. I hadn't expected that. Sophie, please, it's not about the money. It's about doing something right. You built half of the value of that business. You deserve half of the sale. We talked for another 20 minutes, and she told me about her plans. She was going back to school for a master's degree in environmental policy, which she had always been interested in. She seemed lighter, relieved. When the check arrived 8 weeks later, I stared at it for a long time. 450,000. Helen and Richard sent me one final message, a joint email, the day after the business sale was completed. I used some of the money to pursue my JA graduate gemologist diploma, the highest credential in the field, and to begin developing a business plan for eventually opening my own studio. We raised you better than this, Chloe, and we hope you're happy now that you've destroyed your grandfather's legacy. You've made it clear where your priorities lie. I deleted it without responding. A year after I'd walked out of Carter Family Fine Jewelers, I was thriving with my custom designs for Isabel's studio featured in 3 major publications. I'd started seeing a wonderful man I met at a gallery opening, someone who had his own work and hobbies and didn't want me to give up everything for someone else's goals. And I'd reunited with Sophie, whom we saw for coffee every few weeks. I had a waiting list of my own customers. I don't miss working 70 hours a week for nothing. I don't miss being undervalued, and I haven't spoken to Helen or Richard in a long time. She was excelling in her graduate program and appeared genuinely happy for the first time in years. Do you ever miss it? She asked me one afternoon. I mean, I miss Grandpa, but not the shop itself. Have you occasionally? They're still angry at both of us. You for leaving, me for selling. Richard says, we're ungrateful. Helen keeps trying to guilt me about the family legacy. Sophie stirred her latte. I believe they don't understand what they did wrong. They probably don't. In their minds, they were being practical. Give the business to the daughter who needs help. Assume the competent daughter will stick around anyway out of loyalty. But is that really so wrong from their perspective? I thought about it. Maybe not wrong exactly, just incredibly short-sighted. They gambled that I'd value family loyalty more than my own future, and they lost that bet. Sophie smiled sadly. We both disappointed them by wanting different things than what they planned for us. That's their problem, not ours. 2 years after things went apart, I started my own studio, Chloe Carter Fine Jewellery, which specializes in custom engagement rings and heirloom redesigns. Isabel was entirely supportive of the move and was thrilled to see me strike out on my own. My inaugural reception was filled. Ruth and David Greenman came, as did dozens of other clients I'd worked with over the years. Former suppliers I'd built relationships with sent congratulations. Isabel gave a tear-jerking speech about my talent and work ethic. Sophie also came, bringing her girlfriend, Emily, and a bottle of expensive champagne. Congratulations. See, Richard called me 3 years after I discovered those transfer documents. It was a beautiful space in a good neighborhood, filled with my own designs and vision, with no lies or broken promises, just me building something truly mine. My parents did not attend the opening because I had not invited them. It was the first time we'd spoken since that conversation about the Green Man account. Sophia, Richard, I saw an article about your studio in Los Angeles Magazine, and your work is very impressive. Thank you. And I wanted to apologize. Your mother and I handled things badly, making assumptions about what you wanted and what you'd accept, and we were wrong. I waited. We thought we were doing what was best for the family. We thought giving Sophie the security of the business made sense because you were always so capable. We didn't realize we were taking advantage of you. No, you didn't. Can we try to rebuild our relationship? Not the business relationship, the family one. He cleared his throat. I looked around my studio at the designs I'd created, the life I'd built, the future I claimed for myself, and everything I'd accomplished in the 3 years since leaving Carter Family Fine Jewelers. Maybe, I said finally, but it's going to take time. And it starts with you understanding that what you did wasn't just bad business. It was betrayal. Do you? Because you're apologizing after I've become successful. Would you be calling if my studio had failed? If I'd ended up broke and struggling? He didn't answer right away. I'd like to think I would have, but honestly, I don't know. At least that was honest. We talked for a few more minutes, and he told me about retirement and how strange it felt not to have the shop anymore. Helen was volunteering at a local museum. They downsized to a smaller house, and life had moved on without me. Before we hung up, he remarked, "Your grandfather would have been proud of you, Sophia. Those remarks meant more than they probably should have because I'd spent so much time working for Grandpa Lawrence's legacy, trying to respect his memory by protecting what he'd established. It required a lot of guts to start your own firm from scratch. After we hung up, I sat in my studio as evening light filtered through the windows. My phone showed a dozen messages, clients confirming appointments, a supplier sending updated inventory lists, Isabel checking in on a collaborative piece we were working on, and I thought about Sophia. That version of me had believed her worth was tied to a business she could never truly own, to family approval she'd never actually receive. But this version of me knew better. I'd learned that walking away isn't giving up. It's sometimes the bravest thing you can do, and that family loyalty shouldn't necessitate self-destructive behavior. I'd learned that people who truly value you won't wait until you're successful to apologize for how they treated you when you weren't. Most importantly, I'd learned that building something of your own, even if it means starting from scratch, is worth more than inheriting something that was never really yours to begin with. The heir can handle it, I told my father that day. He called in a panic, and I'd meant it because I'd become my own heir.